I wonder if there's any any underlying questions anyone has for me about strategic planning before we start. I think the take on this will be a little bit different to what a couple of you guys will have been used to, which I'm always very interested to see people's opinion afterwards. But I always think about strategic planning and think about those, like, what do people call it? The big, hairy, audacious goals, or those big BHAGs. And I start sharing my screen, pretend like I'm doing this properly, right? And I always think about those big goals and what we're trying to really achieve. And sometimes, especially in the last couple of years, I've looked at other people's goals and what they've strived to achieve, and as an organization, what we've done, what's worked and what hasn't worked. And I think the number one fundamental problem that I've seen is that lack of tying in those financial goals and objectives with actually the money or the numbers behind it. So what I'll say is, say I said that, we turn over, say, 250,000 a month in revenue in the accounting firm, and say my goal was to turn over $1 million. And say, when you break that down, you go, Gary needs to bring in all these new clients, new systems, processes, new people. He's got to have a bigger office, and there's like 100 things to do. But the most important thing to do there is to have the working capital to be able to fund that type of growth. And that's the bit that people forget the most. That's a point that people miss the most, is that they forget about the numbers and how you've got to look at, sorry, my phone's buzzing, how you've got to look at those financial implications. So that's the big part of this presentation, and we want to talk about is actually the numbers behind doing the strategic planning. As we have next week, we'll have Sean talking about strategic planning from a more strategic perspective, a more strategy side. But at this point, we're going to talk about the numbers and how they interact with building a strategic plan, and how you can take that into business. So as always, we do have the financial disclaimer. So Hatcher Advisory and its subsidiaries, together with its owners, managers, and employees, have endeavored to ensure that information is accurate. You must undertake your own research and seek advice from your financial advisors, brokers, accountants, who is certain its application to your specific circumstances. We do not take responsibility for any of the outcomes based on this material. I feel like I should be able to press a button and that should just play. Okay, strategic planning. So for those novices out there, we have goal setting. We have pathway to achieve those goals. We want to have some form of accountability. We want to have some debriefing, and we want to be able to repeat those 5 fundamental parts. So with a good goal setting, we want to have the SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. And, being mindful of who's in the group right now, and you guys will know this stuff really well, but unfortunately for those that aren't here, who may be watching this or listening to this for the first time, we want to be looking here at being very specific with our goals. And what I mean by that is something that we can say, we want to take the revenue of the business from $250,000 per month on average to $300,000. Very specific. It's measurable. It's attainable. It's a 20% growth. It's probably realistic. But the thing I missed there was the time base. And we want to do that within the next 12 months. So if we were to grow the business by $50,000 in revenue over a 12-month period, on average, that would be an extra 20% in revenue, which would be measurable, attainable, specific, realistic, and time-based. So those 5 things. So just thinking about those 5. But as I said and gave you this disclaimer at the start of this, we want to be talking and thinking about it from the perspective of money. And what I mean by that, and going back to the money goal, is if we want to have passive income per year of $180,000, $180,000. So that's $15,000 of passive income per month. If that's what we want to achieve, then we have to think about, do we have enough wealth behind us to buy those assets? Do we have enough income coming in to be purchasing those assets? So you don't have to think about this purely from a perspective of the business owner, but also from the wealth creation perspective. So sometimes people tell me that they want to have $500,000. They want to have $500,000 worth of passive income. And then I look at that and go, how much money would have to be generated from the business or from wealth creation activities to get that $500,000 worth of passive income? And that's where the problem lies with the goal, is sometimes people are forgetting about the financial numbers behind achieving or trying to achieve such a goal. So just to recap on that, you'd need around $10 million worth of wealth in purely investment assets to be able to generate that $500,000 worth of passive income. So let's say we pick a goal and it's, using the SMART, and we've got something specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. What do we do now? Right? So you guys that have played this game before, when we set these goals and we're creating a strategic plan, and I'm going to use my example a little bit later, where we may put them down in a Word document, we write them down on a piece of paper. But what actually happens next after that? So, Simon, have you done this where you've created a goal, you've created a strategic plan, you've created some goals, some things that you want to achieve, and then you've written it down on a piece of paper, and then you've forgotten about it? Have you done that before?
All the time.
All the time. Okay, cool. I've done it too, trust me, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. So all the time. And
no, I'm pretty planned out. I've got a strategic plan, so
yeah.
No.
That's good. That's good. Well, maybe you're more organized than I am. And I figured, and I looked at this and I went, when do we know in a goal, when we have a goal, when do we know when we've been successful or when we've failed? And the analogy I wanted to use, and the one that I was thinking about earlier, was if I want to have Gary's going to go out there and spend, I don't know, $10,000 per month on marketing, branding, that type of stuff. And the whole idea is that's going to generate Hatcher Advisory with an extra $50,000 worth of clients per month on average over a 12-month period. So say that was my goal. So my strategy around that is to invest in some marketing and blah, blah, blah. But what happens if the aspect of the marketing doesn't work, but I'm actually achieving the goal, but it has nothing to do with the marketing? Or likewise, or the other way, flip that a little bit, is the marketing and branding is going phenomenal, but I'm still not converting any new clients. So at some point, we've got to be able to measure if the goal is working and if it's the right way to achieve the outcome that we're trying to achieve. If it's actually going to, if the metrics are getting closer and closer to achieving what we wanted, or if it's just not going to happen at all. So I would prefer, as an avid business owner, entrepreneur, I am like the worst person there is at saying no to things. So I'll likely say yes to way too many different opportunities, ideas, thoughts, business ventures than other people really should be doing. And at a certain point, you've got to pull back, right? At a certain point, you've got to go, this is a great idea and it hasn't worked. and I've either got to pivot or stop because I don't want to invest another 6 or 12 months doing the exact same thing over and over again. And that's where I think about this and go back to, when do we review the strategy? Now, this doesn't mean, and again, for some of the people in here right now, you'll think about this on a quarterly basis. But if I am spending, and marketing is a really good example because it's really easy. Everyone knows marketing. If I'm spending $5,000 a month on marketing and I'm getting no new leads in, then I'm probably going to can that after 2 or 3 months. I'm not going to wait until, 6 months or 12 months has gone by. I'm going to stop it very quickly if we're not progressing closer and closer to the end goal. And these things, they do take time to build up and build the momentum and get really into it. But likewise, I want to be smart about it. So I need to be able to review it if it's working, if it's going to work, if the fundamentals are going to work, or if it's not. And I think about this with the systems and processes that we build in business. And the easiest way to think about this is when we build a new system or process to take, sorry, one second. Thanks, Mick, for squaring on me. When we build a new process or system, and say it is that we use Sean's example, his business. Say we take a truck comes with delivery of all the paints, and now I'm just assuming, so we get the forklift out, we lift off the pallets off the truck, and we place them in his shop. And say if Gary had this brilliant idea, then instead of using a forklift to unload the truck and the pallets, maybe we're just going to unload the pallets by hand and do 5 people in a row all the way into the store, because I think that's going to be a lot faster. So if we're doing some strategy like that, and we look at that and go, well, you know what? That strategy is supposed to increase our efficiency. It's supposed to give our team members more hours to work. It's supposed to, give us a bonding session with the team. But the reality is it's shitty work and nobody enjoys doing it, and we should can it in the butt. Go back to using a forklift because that's faster. The question is, how long should we allow that change in process before we realize that it's not actually getting closer and closer to the end goal, which is to have a better systemized process business? And I do this with IT all the time. So we may test an IT software internally with 2 or 3 people. If we get past that beta testing, we'll then roll it out to the whole team. And with the whole team, as long as I can see that as an organization, we're getting closer and closer to the end goal where we're fully immersed in that software and everyone understands it, then it's all good. But if I was at the point where every single day I was having challenges and problems, and it just kept rolling on, that I was never seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, I was never seeing the performance or the end goal that I wanted to see, then I would have to can it in the butt and revert backwards. So with my team, they'll know that we kept our previous CRM. We kept that going for an extra 6 months after we didn't need to use it, and that was just as a safety net. So I was reviewing our new CRM and our new system to make sure that on a weekly and a monthly basis that the overarching team were getting it and understanding it, so that we're able to move forward. And if we were moving forward with the software, we would continue to move forward. So we want to be reviewing our strategy if it's working and if it's not working. And we don't necessarily want to wait for that quarterly or annual checkpoint if we're not seeing those small improvements. And this is where it's really critical to have the mindset of pivoting and going, you know what? Some of my team members are here, so I may throw some under the bus. Maybe Dolly might have the best knowledge of me making a stupid decision and then changing it and realizing that it was a dumb idea. Do you have any examples for us, Dolly? You won't get in trouble, but your performance review is tomorrow. So I've done it often.
Mm.
Yeah. Go. Do you got an example of me changing my mind because something didn't work?
Luckily, I don't remember anything. That's how great your picture is to me, Gary. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Okay, so the biggest thing that I can, remind people of is that if we go back to our goals and objectives, and I'm going to show you mine shortly, but when we're looking at them, it's not always, not everything is going to go to plan. And when it doesn't go to plan, we have, 3 options. So the first option is we can continue doing exactly what we're doing and hope for a better outcome. And, a lot of people do that with relationships where they're in a shitty relationship. They're just going to continue doing exactly what they're doing and, and hope something different is going to happen. The second thing is we can pivot. So we can change something. So we can communicate. We can communicate differently. We can go, you know what? The system and process that Gary put in place isn't quite working. There's an enhancement. Let's do that enhancement. Or we can cancel it and go, no, that's it, no more. And when I take you through my strategic planning from a couple years ago, you're going to see which ones that we pivoted, which ones we canceled, and which ones we just kept going to try to get a better outcome. And you can critique me on how well we do from a strategic planning perspective. And the best thing is about it is I've got them time-stamped, so we'll be able to see how far I've come or not come with those objectives. And it should be good to note. So people always ask me, and I look at this and go, what is the most important strategic, what is the most important goal to work on first? And here's where I'm going to quickly stop for 20 seconds, open up a different screen and show you my other screen to give you a visual on what a strategic plan could look like. So Sean Sewell, great guy, obviously, for those that know him. He helped us work through our strategic planning in our business, and this is time-stamped from 2020, December 2020. So you can look at our strategic plan here and go, we've got our overarching goal. We've worked out what we need to do to achieve that. So broken that goal down into segments. And we've done that for 13. We've done that for 13 different goals that we've got. And we're working through each of those ones. So this was, again, 2.5, what a year, 3.5 years ago. So hopefully there's no proprietary information in here. I went through it a little bit earlier and I thought I think it'll be fine. But we want to look at here, what out of these 13, which goal is the most important one to work on? And that's where you go, well, which one's going to have the biggest impact on your business? And Sean, when we first started working together, what would, if you were to say, what was the one, actually, I don't want to go into your personal information, so I changed my mind. But only because it is recorded and other people will listen and blah, blah, blah. But there's been, like, in every person's business, there's one big turning point or one big opportunity. And you look at it and go, what is going to have the biggest impact on my organization? And if we got that goal right, if we achieved that one thing, it would bring the rest of it along. So that could be in business or it could be in personal. And in personal, it could be like, you know what, my number one goal that I want to achieve is to buy a house to raise a family in. And, that could be my number one goal, because if I can achieve that, then I can get married, I can have children, I can raise a family, I can be a stay-at-home dad because I'm not a mom. if that's my number one goal to achieve, then that's the most important. All the other stuff is secondary. So when I look at the strategic planning, I think about what is the most important thing to do. If I could only do one of those goals in the next 3 months, because I hate doing things over a 12-month period. But if I can only achieve one thing in the next 3 months, what is going to have the biggest impact on my life or my business? And do I have the financial resources to achieve that goal? So that's, everyone is going to have a different opinion on what is going to have the biggest impact on them for a strategic planning perspective, and on, goal setting and what's going to, have them is the most important thing to them. But that's where you've got to set those priorities, right? So whatever's important to, couple latecomers here, but whatever's the most important to. So Dolly, because you've been playing this game with me today, what do you think is the number one most important thing we need to achieve at Hatcher in the next 12 months from your perspective? And if you say get a new managing director, CEO or something, we won't hold it against you.
You read my mind. Joking. Probably to hit 100% of the budget that we set.
Okay. I don't think that's the most important, to be honest. Do you reckon that you're just saying that to please me? I don't think that's the most important. I think, I don't know, like I think as an organization, I actually reckon the most important objective that we have would be to have probably 95% satisfaction, employee satisfaction across the organization. And I think about that one because if we were to achieve that, then I think everything else would fall into place. So when I look at my goals and my objectives, like the budget is actually, obviously that's critical. We've got to achieve a certain level of profit inside the business to, keep the lights on, which they're currently on, and hopefully no cleaners turn off my lights by mistake when they're leaving my building, like last time. But I think the overarching most important goal for us in our organization probably would be something to do with employee satisfaction, because if employees and team members are happy, they're going to perform to a higher level or to the level that's required. And then they're going to provide a better customer service. They're going to do a better job. They're going to be able to meet their budgets. They're going to put up their hand and ask for different training. I think that's where we're at as an organization now. But if you asked me 2 years ago or 3 years ago, that would not have been my number one focus. So each year would be different. Each quarter is different, but the number one, most important thing that we need to focus on in the organization, is going to be different, but, it's what can we prioritize? And, with that, what do people get wrong? So you can see the idea, lots of dollar signs. I think people underestimate the cost of implementing a financial plan and a strategic plan for the business, the actual financial cost to it. And what I mean by that is, say, so I will use you now, Sean, so we won't use any private information. So say I ask you, Sean, let's just tomorrow, we're going to double your revenue for your business. Off the top of your head, without going into like way too much details, what would the net effect of that be if we double your revenue? Would have more debtors, would have more sales, more creditors, would have to have a bigger team to do the sales, to process the orders.
Yeah, a whole lot of things. But one interesting part that we experienced through COVID is we saw what we we actually saw what we could do with what we had, and that's now died off.
Yep.
But it made us realize what we can do with what we already have.
Yep.
And what we're actually capable of, which was actually very interesting looking back.
So in that context, what you're saying is that it showed you the efficiency level of the current team and what they can perform, what level they can perform to. And because you're on the retail space, so less controllable from you, but it's more driven by the customers walking in the door. But what you're capable of doing if there is enough customers walking in the door and buying.
Correct, yes. One part that we find difficult is as it goes up and down with the different quarters, we actually find it difficult to really drop those expenses in the times that are going to be quiet. That's where we do struggle. We know that revenue is going to drop, and then you've cut so much fat in the areas where you cut fat, and you think, well, where are we going to cut that fat from now?
What extra? What about that's a really good point. And we see it again from a number perspective, and I get to look at 50, 60 clients a month on average, all different industries on a month-by-month revenue, so real-time data. And again, without naming names, but I was talking to someone the other day and they did 180 grand revenue, which was the highest month they've ever had in February. And March dropped down to 110 and April was like around that 100 grand mark. And I was looking at it and going, well, when you did the highest amount of revenue you've ever done, which was actually 187,000, you only made $8,000 worth of profit. But when we looked at your organization 12 months ago, when you were doing 80 grand in revenue, 90 grand in revenue, you were making 20 grand in profit. So you've increased over the 12 months time, you've increased the revenue by $100,000 or 120, 130% increase in revenue, but you've decreased your profit margin. And the actual value of the profit that you have at the end of the month has also decreased. And some of the, sometimes the conversations I have with people are a little bit confronting when I'm talking about this and where we're spending money and we're overspending money. But it's the spending of the money that people get wrong the most, is because we go so gung-ho at growth, we forget about the cost of growing. So in your analogy there, Sean, the only thing that I can think about is, okay, reset the business at the current revenue number, what the current number is. And the organization can only afford to spend X, Y, Z per month on the different areas, because even at a reduced level of revenue, we still need to make a profit, right? Doesn't matter, even if we're only making, not for you, not for your case, Sean, because obviously your business is bigger than this, but even if we're only doing $10,000 a month in revenue, we need to be able to make a profit. If we're doing $20,000 a month, we need to make a profit. If we do 100,000 a month, we need to be able to make a profit. If we do $1 million a month, we need to be able to make a profit. Because otherwise the trap ends up happening, and you see this a lot in the building construction game, is when the revenue goes up and down like a roller coaster, and so does profit. And because of that, we end up having, we can't systemize a result. We can't predict what's going to happen. And if we can't predict and be consistent about growing a business, then we're just hoping for the best. So the most important part about the strategic planning is understanding the financial implications of that and making sure we get that right. And the easiest way to think about that is, again, if you're at a $10,000 turnover business and you want to add 2 team members and bring 2 qualified carpenters in or 2 qualified plumbers in, and you look at that and go, well, their wages is going to cost me, $8 grand per month, 2 people, 16 grand, cars, super, work cover, co-invest, we're probably looking at 22,000. So we need to be billing probably 30 grand by bringing them in to be able to justify doing so. So we need to change the revenue from 10,000 up to about 40,000, because we're going to be having a lot more expenses. So the financial implications of that would then mean that we may be outlaying wages, car, co-invest, work cover for 1 month, 2 months before any customers have actually paid us money into our actual bank account. And that is problematic sometimes. So we need to think about that, those implications of increasing the business. And this is where we look at it and go, when we do double the revenue, because I hear it so often, we take the revenue from that 10 to 20,000. That's what I want to do. We're going to have an increase in debtors. But the biggest part is that people forget and don't focus on is the systems and processes. I'm either fortunate or unfortunate. It depends which way you want to look at it, especially for my team that are here, is that in the accounting space, we have to be systems and process driven. Like we are so reliant on making sure we've got a checklist and we do that checklist because that's what we're getting paid to do. But then we have that checklist for 2,000 customers, 2,000 clients. And if we fail at something, then, sometimes I feel like we personally fail at supporting them. So we need to build systems and processes. So not only when we want to double our revenue, which right now I couldn't even imagine going from, 250,000 a month to 500,000, I don't know, over a 12-month period, that would make me very concerned about how I would do this. But even if we wanted to do this, for me, this systems and processes would be the hardest thing to get right. The debtors increase, I can manage that. That's just a financial thing. I can work that out. The team, oh God, imagine if we had to double in size overnight, that would be pretty damn complicated. The working capital, again, pretty damn complicated, but it's the systems and processes to make sure that nothing fell through the gaps. That would be the hardest part. When I was a child, I had lots of, I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but I had lots of freckles, and I have lots of freckles on my body. And my mum, I think it was my mum or my dad, I can't remember now. My mum or dad, one of those two, it was actually my dad. And they're probably going to watch this on replay and yell at me later. But that spaghetti strainer thing, like a metal one with holes in it, and you put the spaghetti in after you've cooked it and water drains out of it, and it has like heaps of holes everywhere. Good analogy because I don't know what it's called, but I'm pretty certain my dad said to me that when I was young that my mum must have put that on my face so the sun burnt my skin and gave me freckles. And my biggest fear in life is when we're trying to support people is watching us have a business and, all these different inputs are coming into it. And instead of us actioning and taking care of what we need to do and doing everything in time, there's something, comes out and something escapes without our knowledge. Something falls through the crack in our business and that system and our process fails. And it happens from time to time, obviously, but that's one of my biggest pet hates is when the system fails, and the system always fails when you double your business because you don't know what you need to do. The only difference here is in the steel business, is with my steel business that I have at the moment, because that business is smaller than the accounting firm, I have a really good understanding of what systems and processes I need to have in place for that size of business. So I haven't had too many things fall through the cracks that I was unexpected to happen. But doubling the revenue of a business is quite challenging. And I'm at that point now where in the steel business, we're probably going to be looking at in the next 3 to 6 months of going from 100 to maybe 300,000 per month on average. And I'm like, okay, I need to be allocating more time to that business, or otherwise a lot of things could fall through the cracks. So let's think about the goal. So the goal here, let's say you have a SMART goal. So you have a goal of increasing revenue in your organization, in your business by $5,000. So it'd be probably more, say like $15,000 per month. And to achieve that, you're thinking about this by you wanting to spend, $5,000 per month on marketing because you think that's going to help you to achieve your goal. So the first part is what happens if it's too successful? So this actually does happen. In marketing, this actually happens where you do an ad campaign, it's crazy, you do something and it goes viral, and instead of getting 10 leads, you get 1,000. so you have to be thinking about what worst case there is. What happens if it's too successful? You've got to have measures in place so you can stop doing the marketing, you can stop doing what you're doing until you can catch back up, and to work through that, or to refilter out those leads, or to qualify them a little bit better so you have less of them. Because again, there's no point having 10,000 people go to my website, click in the contact us section and fill in a form to speak to one of the team if out of those 10,000 inquiries, only 2 of them are qualified. We only want the 2, right? With the idea of 5,000, most businesses that I work with could spend $5,000 on marketing if they wanted to per month. And the question is, why do they, or why don't they? And I look at here is the question is it going to be the best use of funds? Do you have other financial commitments that are more important? If not, it's probably a good idea. We've still got to have that return on investment, like we talked about in the previous webinar, when we went into great detail about marketing and achieving a return on investment. We've still got to achieve that, but we've got to look at the financial commitments, and is it the most important place to be allocating those funds? We also want to, briefly touch on those guys in here that are running different businesses. We want to have a CRM in place. We want to be capturing the details. We want to have a sales funnel. Again, you can probably go back to the previous webinar that we covered off on those topics, but we want to make sure that we're not wasting the leads. A good example I heard recently was, unfortunately for one of my clients, that they do a lot of ad spend. So they spend, $100,000 a month on, social media type of advertisement. And with that, normally they do pretty well. They normally get around 40 or 50 customers a month. And they try to do something new because of a current fad that's going on in the marketplace and what the industry that they're in. So they jumped on board. So they jumped on board the ChatGPT chain, and they said, what's going to happen in AI? What's going to happen in AI in the stock market? So, they put all their energy and resources into advertising to that type of avatar instead of their normal avatar, which they still got the leads through the door, but they weren't the right leads. So what we want to be looking at, as always, is if we're thinking about spending $5,000 a month on marketing, we've got to think about what happens. Sorry, 1 second. What happens if it's successful? What happens if it's not successful? And do we have the right systems and processes in place? The fun part of all of this is the debriefing process. So if we open up my plan and we say we achieved $2.5 million turnover by June 2021. So it's really simple. It's very factual. Did we achieve it? So we look at this and go, did we achieve the goal? Yes or no? So in that year, we didn't achieve the goal. So it was a no. Why? Why didn't we achieve it? In 2021, we had a COVID year. Obviously, that was unexpected, and that obviously changed my whole thought process on what I could do in the business and how long it would take me to do it. What actions do we need to take from that to correct the issue or to enhance it? Well, COVID is a funny one in the accounting industry because it has stopped us from doing face-to-face meetings and made us do all online meetings, Zoom meetings, and that has its advantages and disadvantages. But that also allowed us to do more meetings without as much travel, and our meetings, we could be timed correctly. So we would make sure that it was a 1 hour meeting, it went for 1 hour instead of it going for 1.5 hours. So we're able to time things a lot better. So what would I take out of that and not achieving my financial goal of 2.5 million? I've learned that, if I want to be better at time management, then I need to make sure there's a clock somewhere I can see a clock. So I'm taking a lesson from it. And I try to roll over in that setting. I rolled my goal over from 2021. 2021. It didn't work. From 2021, I changed this to 2022, and that was my 2022 goal. So I didn't reevaluate my goal. I just reset my goal because of the whole COVID situation. You want to look at that, learn from it, and analyze it and see what we can improve. Likewise, if we're thinking about financial goals here, we could say again, we want to buy an investment property, one investment property in the next 12 months. Question is, did we achieve that? Pretty simple to say yes or no. And there's a reason why we achieved it or why we didn't achieve it. If we don't achieve that goal, it could be because I didn't have enough cash deposit or I didn't have enough lending power. And those two ones, I need to build a bigger deposit up to buy that investment, or I need to find a way to boost up my income to get me the lending power now that interest rates have gone up for the 12th time. And my strategy still might be the same. I'm probably not going to, I still don't want to change that strategy. I'm not going to pivot to a different one. If my lending is completely screwed because I just had like a baby or something, I may just put the money into the stock market instead, because that doesn't involve us, lending. But I want to be doing this debrief process on the goals, but on pretty much everything inside my organization on a monthly basis minimum. I look at my business, and every single time we do a set of financials and tax returns that are dollar value more than $500, we do this process to make sure that we tick off on the deliverables what we want to achieve internally. And that has increased the level of efficiencies in the organization, and also increased the level of responsibility by the team in doing what they need to do to complete the jobs. So the debriefing process can be used from a really simple goal setting. I want to finish this job within, Simon here was here earlier, jumped off cam, but he might have a target to finish this job within 10 hours. And the question is, did he achieve that? Yes or no? Why? Because it was raining, I wasn't able to get out on site or be out on site for the full 10 hours. So I had to go there and back a few times. What action do we need to correct this? Well, if it's raining, maybe we shouldn't be doing that type of job because it's, we can't do it out in the rain. What have we learned from it? Look around the scheduling for the weather just to make sure we schedule the right jobs at in the right weather. Does it change the goal? Probably not, because that was just an internal goal on just that one job. And likewise for, if you're owning a retail business and you're looking at it and going, well, in my retail business, my goal is to achieve, $5,000 worth of sales per day. And if we, why did we achieve that? We had lots and lots of customers come in today. It's, it's Friday. Everyone wanted to buy stuff before the weekend. But on Saturday it was raining and everyone stayed away. So you might have different things that are outside of your control, but all we can do is look at it, understand it, and see if it's something that we can change. And we go back to my example of my goals and objectives from 2021. I want to look at and just excluding all the minor stuff here that is not really relevant, but we go out of this. Before I said, what is the most important goal for us to achieve for the success of our organization? Now, my IT person, Ben, will probably hate me when I suggest this. This is one of the areas that I have not put as much focus in as I put in other areas of the organization. But also I do pay an outside IT person to manage all of our IT stuff. And he probably does get frustrated at me when I ignore his messages or emails about doing things. I always respond back to him, but it's sometimes a little bit slow to do so. So when I look at those first 4 objectives, if I was going to place these in order of what's the easiest for me to do, I'd probably say this is the most easiest thing for me to do. This would probably only take me, a couple hours that we would build an IT strategy for the business and have an internal, IT specialist. It'd probably only take me a couple hours to do that, which we do have now. But out of the, the urgency, the most urgent thing that we had to do here, this is only going to cost me, 5, 10, 20 grand a year. Not like, in the scheme of things, the financial implications of doing that, is going to be And if we look at this and go, you know what, Gary hates doing IT stuff, and you'll see that I do a lot of IT stuff and I slowly let go of it. But I'm also a slow learner when it comes to this. If I can do two things with my hand, why should I pay someone else to do it? So on the weekend, we have a new team member starting tomorrow, a new graduate accountant. So I'm looking forward to them to start, but their computer is set up in the wrong spot. So we need to reshuffle that around. So it's going to take Gary, this was literally yesterday, 1 hour to move the computer, reset IT issues, etc. So I was thinking about it yesterday when I was working, and I was catching up on my emails, reviewing my work, and I thought to myself, you know what? I have Ben. Ben's awesome. He does all of our IT. He does all of our IT stuff. He cost me maybe $220 an hour, including GST. I hope he does cost me that and he doesn't increase his prices now that I've typed this. Might only be 150. I'm a little bit nervous now about this. But he cost me that. And if this means that I don't have to spend an extra 1 hour in the office working on a Sunday, and I can spend that time at home, or I can spend that time doing more valuable exercise in the organization that will make the organization more money, then I should probably doing that. So what I did yesterday, because I was limited on time, I had 3 hours to get as much work done as possible, or most valuable, important work done as possible. So what I decided was the IT wasn't even close to the most important job that I had to do. So I looked at all this work that was piled up on my desk for me to review, and I decided that that was more important, which allows me to go, well, in a course of a year, even if I spend, having an internal IT person, I'm probably spending that 10 to 20,000 because of how big our organization is on IT, which is fine, but that may be saving me 50, 100, 200 hours of my time, which I can either be spending with the family or be spending with friends. Sometimes I value spending time with different people quite highly, or I can spend that doing work. So in the short term, back in 2020, December 2022, this was on our list. It wasn't the most important thing that we had to do, but I did tick this off at some point in the future. I can't tell you when it was, but at some point in the future, I definitely did tick it off. But out of my list of 13 things, not even important. This rolled on for like 6 months or 12 months before I finally actioned it, because I always thought to myself, why don't I just do it myself? Because it's going to cost me $200, $220 for someone else to do it. I'll just do it myself. So then looking at that and debriefing that at a certain point in time, you've got to go, well, is that the best use of my time for the organization to achieve our overarching goal? And if the answer is yes, Gary's setting up a computer to do that, then I'm probably in the wrong line of work. Maybe I should have an IT business. If I can have bigger impact on the team, on the organization, on the world by doing something different than setting up my IT work for a new grad, then that's probably going to benefit us a little bit better. And you'll notice, some of the team will notice, and they may critique me on this later, but I don't blame me for this one. I've wanted a professional development plan set out for my whole team for more than 2.5 years, and we still have not got around to it. So obviously I put up my hand and say that is my fault, that we have prioritized other things that are more critical to the organization. But each month I do bring this up, and we still work on this, and we're supposed to be working on this on a monthly basis at the moment to implement this out to the whole team. And we are getting closer, we are moving closer, which is the whole point, that this goal objective is a nice thing to have. As far as I know, with every accounting firm that I've ever been to before, they don't have this in place. And this is something that I stole from the concept from a early childhood center. They always have these professional development plans in place for their they're team members, and I took that. I thought that's really cool. I want to have that in our accounting firm, but we also have to create it from scratch. So if anyone does know any other accounting firms that do that, please tell me so I can correct myself for next time. But you can see that this has taken me 2.5 years. Some of you might say, Gary, that's really simple to do. And I might tend to agree with you, but it hasn't been the most important thing that I've had to focus on in the time that I have to focus on strategic planning. And that's the big part about strategic planning, is that it's not just a value of money. It's not just a money value that we have that's important. It's also the time. So all of us only have 24 hours a day. Try it again. All of us only have 24 hours a day. All of us have the same 7 days a week. I'm I'm going to reword that. I like to sleep at least 8 hours a night. Oops. I like to sleep 8 hours a night. So the amount of working hours that I have in the day may be less than other people. I like to obviously do exercise and keep healthy and hang out with amazing friends and spend time with people. So that may impact the amount of working time that I have. Say that's like on average, I don't know, 2-3 hours a day maybe. And we'll just say lifestyle. And then we have work. Work is probably for me is around that 10 hours on average most days. Somehow I'm missing 1 hour, so this must be 4. So this is my, generally speaking, this is what I love to do. I love to have 8 hours of sleep. You will notice if I don't have 8 hours of sleep, I'm a grumpy person. I do spend more in the morning. I do like to do a little bit of exercise before coming to the office. And I'd like to go to sleep by like 9 o'clock. And I normally am doing that at least 8 to 10 hours of work, 8 to 10 hours of work on the weekdays. But all of this is time, right? So one of the most, in my opinion, valuable resources that we have is time. So when we're looking at our strategic plan and thinking about it realistically, that this may take me personally 50 hours of work to get this right. I might be able to lean on different team members to help support me to get this done, which obviously I really need to, because this 50 hours of work has taken me 2.5 years to do. But if we're thinking about the time, the most important use of our time and where that is, because sometimes it's not actually on strategic planning. Sometimes the most useful use of the time is on, we'll just call it billable work or making money for the organization. Sometimes generating money to pay bills is more important than strategic planning. And I fall into that trap every now and then when we're not going as well as we wanted to go from a financial perspective, that I jump straight back into how can I work more hours to generate more income, to do more work, to catch up or whatever that may be. And that's the default setting that I have. And then there's no strategic planning. So when we're thinking about that strategic planning, we have to think about the finance side of things. We have to think about what the most important task is. And worst case scenario, we go back to my plan. Worst case scenario, go, well, you know what? This is our number one goal that we're trying to achieve. There's all these mini sub goals that we have to do. Actually, you know what? I'll tell you what I did here. I likely did this. That makes logical sense for me to have actually done. There's no chance I ever did this. Upload all EL projects into this would have got done. Run projects based on this would have got done, and identify the gap. So we would have done all this except for this one. But the reality is in our business, if we don't run these 4 things every single day, month of the year, then you can't run an accounting firm successfully. So we would have done that. If you look at some other ones that I've got, we'll just pick the last one. We have an effective management structure in place. That's interesting. So we would have done this. we would have done this just before Christmas. So this was probably thinking about just before having, before Jenny, just when Jenny got pregnant and stuff, this would have come into place where we need to make sure that we've got an effective management structure in place to handle Jenny stepping out of the organization. And, you know, the thing is, we probably would have done some of this, but what we did with this financial, our business strategy, what we do with every strategy that we've ever done, and people will critique me negatively on this one, but it's the honest truth. Maybe Simon doesn't do this, but we do this. We get it. It is saved, which is a concern because it has auto save on, which means it's saving something that I don't want it to be saving. But I get it. I've written it up, and now I've not looked at it for another 3 months, and it's gone. It's disappeared. And then I open it up in 3 months' time, and I go, shit, I wonder what I did. Did I tick those ones? And naturally, over that 6 years of doing this, I've found that I only do the most important things. I naturally do the most important goals, and we achieve the most important goals. And that goes back to time, that goes back to money, and that goes back to priorities. So don't pick the easy ones. Think about the money side of the, the money implications of doing what you're trying to do, and think about the time that you're willing to invest personally as an organization to achieve that. Obviously, next week we do have a guest speaker, Sean Sewell from Inner Circle. He will be talking and giving us a special guest appearance. Obviously, some of you guys will know him. I'm looking forward to it, seeing what his take on strategic planning is. I'm sure that some of you guys will be equally interested to see what he has to say. I personally think that I dress better than him. I'm happy for you guys to, comment if you agree that I'm a better dresser than him. Even now after he's now got got Chloe dressing him. We will edit this out so no one can hear this on replay. But yeah, so he's coming next week. It'll be really cool. This will be on Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday the 17th of May. It's one day before my birthday, so it should be an easy one for everyone to remember. Remember, you probably need to send gifts to me in the mail prior to that day so it comes on time. Again, we'll edit that one out. But yeah, so hand it over to you guys all. Do you have any questions or thoughts on the strategic planning, something that's you're stuck on at the moment, whether it is personal, not business related, because obviously we do strategic planning, financial planning, wealth creation strategies personally, and we do them from a business perspective.